Good morning. It's February 10th, the JupyterLab / Jupyter Notebook dev meeting. And Brian, you are first in line on the notes. Do you want to go first?
I can. I think we're all in the middle of adding notes, but I surely can start. So I've been doing a lot of work this last week on just usability and design related things for the beta. And things are looking like overall in lab right now, it's very, very usable. I've been using it in my teaching, and it's really starting to shape up, and I'm really, really excited about it. There's two issues that I wanted to bring up here for discussion. The first one is I added a command for navigating between tabs in the main dock panel. And when I submitted the original PR, I bound those commands to command or control left or right arrow. And Steve and I both said, hey, of course, no one's using those keyboard shortcuts. And since then, we've sort of realized that every possible keyboard shortcut is taken, and by other things that we would interfere with. And so I'm wondering if anyone had any bright ideas on what keyboard shortcut would sort of be used to cycle through those.
I think we just need to pick one and allow people to configure it through the setting system. So just pick one for now and say eventually you'll be able to customize them by setting up your own key maps and overriding the defaults.
I would say don't pick one that's in the browser. Oh, go ahead, Darren.
Well, one thing to consider is if we can somehow take advantage of platform stuff. So like on a Mac, if you do Command Shift curly brace one direction or the other, it goes through tabs in pretty much every app that has tabs. So suppose on a Mac we did Control Shift curly space, and then on a PC we did Excel Shift. That way we don't mess with Windows users or Mac users, but we keep a keyboard shortcut that is vaguely familiar.
And as an FYI, when you specify a key binding, you can specify key bindings to use on specific platforms. So there's a Mac keys option and a Win keys option and a Linux keys option that will take precedence over the default keys option depending on what platform you're on. So we already have the ability to do that.
And the poor guy's running FreeBSD?
Linux,
yeah, I mean,
or Mac. I mean, you can pick one. So
okay, like there's a lot of other OSs out there. Raspberry.
I think if we come up against a scenario where that's the only barrier that we have, like it runs fine except for that, then we're doing pretty great.
Yeah.
What about?
I think we should use MX focus tab left, focus tab right. I mean, just kidding.
Control Alt Delete.
Yeah, that's what we should use.
No. Alt F4. It needs to be Alt F4 on Windows.
Yeah.
What about Option Shift or Alt Shift right left brackets? Part of what I like about that is my right hand is bound eternally to this three finger chord of Command Shift left and right tab. And all I have to do on a Mac keyboard is move my thumb over one, and I'm navigating through JupyterLab. Whereas there's no right control.
But again, whatever we decide here is going to be wrong for somebody using a German keyboard. So we don't have a choice but to make this configurable through the setting system.
Yeah.
But I think as a default, that's pretty sensible. One thing that I do on my Mac that nobody else does, so it's not something that I would necessarily take into account, but you might consider yourself. I always map my caps lock key to Control because I never, ever need caps lock, but I always need Control. That might help you personally, but it's not going to help users in general. But the idea of just one key over from Excel being Alt and doing Alt Shift bracket, I think that's a good idea because it's it has that familiarity. It won't really disrupt much. For Mac
What are we
users,
saying?
doesn't help.
Arrow.
Are we also considering a shortcut for tabbing or for focusing between different tab panels?
This already works.
Different tab panels. What keyboard shortcut goes between tab
Just
panels?
keep going.
So this globally
Oh.
cycles through tabs in your current panel and then hops to the next panel that's listed in the dock panel
Okay.
tab panels list.
Okay.
So it
So it just
cycles
goes through
everything,
all tabs. Yeah. Okay.
and it's periodic as well. So it starts back at the beginning.
Does it have the often used? Oh no, I guess if you're going left and right, it's not like Alt Tab where you have a sort of most recently used, so it's easy to flip back and forth between two tabs.
Not yet. I mean, we could do something like that, but
Yeah, but this is just left and right. Okay.
yep, just yep, left and right cycle through periodically.
Okay.
Chris, what do you think would be a reasonable default on Windows?
Good question.
Windows Shift. Wouldn't that be the corresponding key on a US 101 keyboard layout?
Actually, no, you can't use Windows, the Windows key for anything because the browsers don't report that.
That's right. Yeah,
I'm glad you got down in the weeds at some point with all these things, so you can remind us of all the details.
Yeah, so you have your options for modifiers on Windows are Control, Alt, and Shift.
Yeah.
The best part of using the Windows key on Windows is if you switch from a Mac to a PC and you're used to hitting Command L to change your URL, you will lock your machine.
So the other nice thing is that the browser, the DOM specification has a meta key modifier on keyboard events, but it's only ever true on Mac. Like none of the browsers actually support the Windows key as the meta key.
Yeah.
Which is fine anyway, because in Windows 10, like the actual Windows button supersedes every other application, so it would be useless anyway on Windows 10.
All right. So, what's your thoughts? I don't even have a Windows keyboard in front of me, so I don't even know what keys are there or what the layout looks like. What is used for Sublime or something like that to go between tabs, or even
Good question.
Chrome?
Well, there's multiple things. So one of the things that so we're just talking about navigating back and forth, but there's also the ones that a lot of people use, which is Control 1, Control 2, Control 3 on a PC, or Command 1, 2, 3 on a Mac. So it might just be that some people never get used to the navigation one; they just jump straight to what they want. We don't have a good way of doing that one at all, because Alt 1, Command 1, and Control 1 are probably all things that something else wants, but I'm not sure.
Well,
and it's not even clear what one is.
Sorry, I posted an idea on that issue about doing something like that by leveraging the fact that title objects have a mnemonic index, which we use in menus and that kind of stuff. And so we could have a shortcut that basically puts the dock panel into like a quote unquote mnemonic mode, to where the mnemonic characters of tabs are actually displayed as underlined rather than right now just being ignored. And then when you're in that mode, we could have a shortcut that, or some key handler or something. We'd have to figure out how to do this. But when you press that key, the dock panel then finds the tab with that mnemonic character and then jumps to that and then takes itself out of mnemonic mode. So it would be like a chord where a shortcut and a key binding would enter you into that mode, and then it would have to install its own key handler to process the mnemonics properly, since that can't generally be done in a shortcut.
Right. So
that would be one way to do that, but we'd still probably want another shortcut for navigating next and previous tabs. So I don't know, like some Control Alt arrow, or I don't know. Like I don't use those shortcuts for anything that I do in Windows. So I mean, I'd still be fine with like the braces. Same thing that I would do on a Mac, I probably would do on Windows. So if it was like Command Alt, use like Control Alt or something like that, or Control Shift.
Can you see real quick what on Chrome goes between tabs?
Chrome is is Command Shift brackets for tab navigation.
But Command is not on Windows, so that's what I was wondering.
On Windows.
Control, let's see, Control
tab.
tab and Control Shift tab jump to the next and previous open.
Or Control page down, Control page up.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah, Control tab.
Chrome also does Command Option right arrow and left arrow. That's the one listed in their webpage of shortcuts.
That doesn't work for Windows.
Yeah, so if we're on Windows, it's yeah, they don't have left arrow and right arrow.
I think they used. I think they used page down because page down's a pain to get to on Mac. You just got to press function to get to it.
Yeah.
Just posted the link to their shortcut listing.
I mean, in theory, the browser has multiple ways of doing it. We could take one of them, but we're always going to pick one of them that someone is using. So if we made it configurable, then that would solve the issue.
Yeah, I think we definitely have to make it configurable. But in order to do that, we have to have settings. Yet another thing blocked out settings. I can't wait till we have settings. That'll be great.
So is Control Shift brackets available as a reasonable default on both platforms?
Control Shift brackets.
Depends on who you're asking, because somebody's going to say no.
It doesn't seem to do anything for me when I'm just trying it.
Control Shift. Yeah, I think so. I think that
Why not?
by the time. Go on, Chris.
What about like Control Shift N and Control Shift P? Oh, never mind. Control Shift N is a new incognito window on Chrome.
Yeah, Control Shift N is. I was gonna say. I don't know about P though.
It's print. The print dialog.
Oh, right. Nice. Yeah, no, I think Brian's suggestion is probably. Look, I think we need to find something that's just sane and doesn't clobber something. I don't think we're going to find something ideal. I think the ideal is everyone sets their own. And it's such a constrained environment because there's OS level ones, then there's browser level ones, and more third tier. So everyone's already, it's slim pickings at this level.
Yeah,
Chris, does Control Shift brackets not do anything for you?
Yeah, that seems fine.
It seems fine for me on a Mac.
Okay, let's do that at least for a day until someone finds that it launches the nuclear weapons at the national lab or something.
A day? That's pretty conservative, Brian.
Yeah. If it launches nuclear weapons, then we won't have to worry about it after a day. Anyway, okay, so next.
So I can implement that. The next is pull request 1691, and this is an issue that I opened. I was cleaning up some design stuff, and basically I'm exploring prompt styling in JupyterLab, and the main thing that I'm trying to accomplish. One is better typography. The monospace fonts are pretty painful for something like this. And so right now I'm using our UI font, which is Helvetica New, Helvetica Arial, and then sans serif. And the other is trying to make the prompts slightly more subdued. The visual representation of the prompts in Lab and even Classic is really strong, and I think it detracts from the user content. It's distracting. And so if folks want to 1691, yes, look at that. And initially I tried to use some opacity, but Chris rightly pointed out that made it look like they were disabled. And so my latest attempt is to pick a the hue of a material design blue and orange that's close to the original prompt numbers, and then bring the saturation down towards gray and the lightness up.
Can you show it?
Oh yeah. Do you want a screenshot? Do you want a live? Actually, I can't do live preview on this system because I have two computers open.
A screenshot would be good, just especially since we're recording it.
Yeah, hold on. Let me just pull this out.
I think I put a link to the most recent screenshot in the PR. I'm still a little partial towards serif monospaced like we had in the old notebook. I agree with someone's comment that the I is a little far away from the N and it's a little visually jarring.
Yeah, so I've also played with the letter spacing. So the default letter spacing would be 0, and this is 3. Yeah, I can go down to 2, and some of that goes away.
Wait, these are not identical in the screenshot, right? Like the final in, the I is closer to the N than the first in. Or is that just an optical illusion?
I'm not sure. So here, I've got the screenshot, and I can share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's the.
It still looks that way to me, but that's sort of immaterial point.
With the sans serifs, it does look a little bit like you're calculating natural logs of things.
Yeah. And that's right. One thing I brought up in my poll or in the issue or pull request is that a font that has letter shapes like Helvetica does make, like, it's the wrong kind of I. We really need even if we're using a non-monospaced font, having one that had bars on the I think would help. And so I may look around to see if we can find something like that. The other option is to just have Cameron design an actual icon for us that we can use for this.
And
so that
one option is to go lowercase, but that might be a non-starter, just given the history of how long it's been uppercase.
And what about just having I and O instead of in and out? Then they would align in terms of.
That's a possibility. Another thing.
Or what if or even taking out in and out and just making the brackets different between in and out?
Yeah, we can use color for that. This other pull request.
Not just color. I think if we have curly brackets versus square brackets or something like that to distinguish in versus out.
So this another pull request that I opened, 1624, adjust the width of the prompt area based on the size of the width of the notebook panel. And one of the intermediate visual treatments that I did was to remove in and out and just keep the square brackets. And I actually like that quite a bit.
I would say it's really important to distinguish more than just by color. So if we did square versus curly brackets or square versus parentheses.
I wonder how just I or O would look. I, 5, O.
Is that enough discussion to get us going on this?
Yeah, no, again, I just wanted to bring it to people's attention, and if you've got ideas, please post on the issue. That this definitely gives me more ideas to try out.
Cool.
And then that's all I have.
Okay. Just short update. we've been working steadily towards IPyWidgets 6 release, concentrating a lot on the experience, the migration experience people have in the current notebook. We as in Grant, pushed out a notebook 4.4 release that had an important fix for us for the output widget to work. I was just working today on getting, when you clear the outputs for cells, that it'll clear the widget area as well, but it turns out that that's probably going to need a one-line change in the notebook to have cells notify when they're being cleared so that we can tap into that notification. So that might necessitate a 4.4. Well, I guess technically it should be a 4.5 because it's adding a new feature, but maybe we can fudge and say 4.4.1. It's one line adding a notification that nobody would notice. I don't know. We could make that call later, but I want to get closer to any other possible changes we need to the notebook before trying to cut another release of the notebook.
Gotcha. And then have you been able to talk more with Cameron about the final design path?
No, but we really do need to get together because we're getting down to that being a blocker.
So I'm planning on working with Cameron today from 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific. Are you around at all during that window?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I should be around at like 1 o'clock Pacific.
Okay, let's see. We may be able to get some of that done today.
Let's get on it. Okay, great. Yeah, ping me when you guys get together, and I should be around.
Okay, great.
All right. Next is Ashton.
So yeah, I've been continuing this separation of concerns of the plugins that interact with consoles and notebooks, and I've got the completer working now, which means that you could change the shortcut that invokes a completer, but the way that it currently works, it requires kind of a cumbersome hack, because what we really needed to get it to work before, we were just talking to the DOM ourselves and using events and catching events in the capture phase. But the key map manager currently is catching everything. We've set it to catch everything in the bubble phase, and we want that to remain the default. So there's a new feature that Chris is going to be building into Phosphor 1, which will have the ability to add a binding that's going to be caught in the capture phase. But in the interim, I've got a workaround based on the APIs that we have. There was a way to interrupt every single subsequent key down after you've invoked your completer, so that basically I can catch and say, oh, actually you hit tab again. Don't let that tab go through to the editor. But what that means is that currently, in order to invoke a completer, I have to limit you to a shortcut that is a single character. So if you want to invoke it on dot, that's okay. If you want to invoke it on tab, that's okay. If you want to invoke it on some sort of like Emacs style keystroke, that's currently not okay, but it will be very soon because Phosphor 1.0 is coming out and I can remove this stuff. The reason that PR is not finished though is because just looking at the architecture of how these plugins work, it just occurred to me that it's not enough just to have the plugins themselves be totally external to notebooks and consoles. You also want the plugins themselves to not privilege the existence of notebooks and consoles by basically adding commands that say do this with the notebook tracker or do that with the console tracker. Because if somebody else shows up and they create a foo class that should be completable, they should have first class access to all these things. So I'm separating it out in a way that basically has the pattern is that, say you're an inspector or you're a completer, the plugin file creates a core service plugin, and that returns some sort of manager basically that you can talk to. You could hand off some sort of generic interface for completable things. And if necessary, it might return a thing to you that you can keep it updated, like when your editor swaps or whatever. Or if it's super simple, like the a tooltip, it's just a one-off. You just send it and you forget about it. But the point is that it won't lock you in. It won't privilege the notebooks and consoles, even if that same. So right. So that's the one plugin. Then there's two other plugins in there, one for notebooks and one for consoles, just because those are defaults that we have. But there's nothing magic about them. They don't have access to any private information, and that's sort of. So I think every stage of this process has been, all right, devolve it even more and make sure these things are completely sort of decoupled from each other. And I think this is the final phase of that decoupling, which will make it easier for other people to just make use of functionality that just like a month ago was kind of woven into our core classes. So I think it's pretty positive.
How easy will it be? How easy will it be to hook a language service up to an editor? So like a TypeScript language service for Python up to an editor and do completion and help and everything.
Well, I'm not sure.
If we had a service, like could it use this stuff?
If there was a service that talked with an API that is semantically similar, not like obviously not like the same output, but has the same semantics of our API's completion request, then what you could do is you could subclass the completion handler class and basically override its make request function, have that request go to whatever your service is, and the rest should just work out of the box. Everything else is agnostic to where the data is coming from and what the data is like. You might have your make request function do some sort of formatting so that the options come out in the sort of array that it's looking for or whatever, but it should actually be only having to rewrite that one function in a subclass. Yeah, I mean, obviously, since I haven't tried it, I'm sure there are things that I've overlooked, but conceptually, that's what's meant to happen, so we can fix it if it doesn't.
Cool.
The other place I think this pattern will be really useful is for the notebook and text editor search capabilities. I think we'll sort of want like different types of documents to expose some sort of API that a search functionality can use, so we don't have to sort of rewrite search for different document types. And I think that sort of decoupling will allow us to implement search in a way that's not tightly coupled with the different document types.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought of search, but that's like one of the most powerful things that I do in my text editor, and I need it all the time. So yeah, that's a good point. And you really want that interface to look the same everywhere, even if it's doing different work under the covers. So yeah, good point. Yeah, that's it for me. I linked to the PR if you're curious, but ultimately, these are all code changes. There should be no impact to users. It's more about how we're organizing what we're doing.
Cool.
Great.
Thanks. Steve, you're next.
Okay. Since our last meeting, I finished the Cell Tools editor, and then swapped out the text area for an actual code mirror. And we released with a bug where it wasn't doing exactly what I wanted it to, but there's a fix in master now. And I think once we merge a few more PRs, we haven't changed any APIs since the last release, so we can actually put out a patch release that has style and some internal fixes. And so in general, I've been working on beta issues, attacking them as best I can, trying to get the numbers down that are open. Mostly bug fixes, no features other than the cell tools, and that's about it.
Ian,
I think you'll find I've changed some APIs, by the way.
Oh, whoops.
Again?
Darren?
Well, no, I mean, I was going to say, I think you'll find I've changed some APIs.
No. I mean, if we can cut a release before we merge your PR.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Cool. Ian?
Yeah, so I've been doing continued work on having sort of more hierarchical collaborative objects. One of the things that's been particularly tricky, and I think it's going to need some work on the observable vector interface, is to have a smarter factory object for constructing a collaborative object on the fly. The particular use case that's coming up is, say, a user, not you, inserts a new cell. The person on the other end is going to need to be able to construct a cell model and a cell widget that talks to that. My approach in the past has been just, serialize it to JSON and then deserialize it, which works fine, but it's not the changes you can make to that are not very granular. So basically what I need is a smarter factory object that can take something that's more like an observable map and construct a cell from that. So I've been doing a lot of sort of iteration on different ways that could manifest itself in the interfaces. I haven't really come up with something that I'm very happy with at the moment, but that's the essential problem space that needs some changes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is there a branch or
Yeah.
is the code some place that we can sort of look through the
Yeah,
current state?
I can add a link to it. It's not really in a state that I think would be very useful for eyes at the moment. It's kind of all over the place. But I'll add a link to that branch to the hackpad.
Thanks.
I'll just also call out that William Stein wrote a very interesting blog post contrasting his RethinkDB experience with his rewrite to PostgreSQL to do all of his collaborative stuff. So it's much more infrastructure related.
Right.
But it was an interesting blog post, I thought.
So he's now using Postgres for that.
He's either in the middle of transitioning or has just transitioned to PostgreSQL, and posted a huge blog post saying it's actually way better.
Wow. That's encouraging.
Yeah. It's on the front page of Hacker News, I think. Still, there's hundreds of comments.
Nice. This is awesome.
Chris, could we get an update from you? One of the things that we'd hoped before releasing iPadWidget 6 was to migrate to Phosphor 1, since we're basing widgets on Phosphor now. But we don't want to block too long on that. Can we get an update from you on?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned on the meeting on Tuesday that I was hoping to have the last few files in the 1.0 release done, so that I can actually push out the packages under the app Phosphor namespace as 0.x releases, so people can actually start moving their code over to that while I finish up tests and the other sort of ancillary stuff that's needed for a 1.0 release, but shouldn't otherwise block you from porting your code over. So that I'm finishing up command palette. Actually finished up the actual code yesterday, but we're tweaking the actual fuzzy search algorithm to be a bit more natural and handle some edge cases. So tidying up that, and then the only thing left is doc panel. So I'm still hopeful to get that done between today and this weekend. So hopefully next week you can start grabbing those 0.x Phosphor namespace packages and updating your imports and modifying just a couple APIs. So.
Cool. Thanks.
Yep.
And Sylvan, I see you just joined. Do you have anything to contribute? I talked a little bit about what we were doing with iPadWidgets, but anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Jamie? Anything from the project side?
Nope, not on this end. I am working on a diagram of all of our teams across the project that I would love to share with the team at some point. But we are working on some team assignments still. So as I work through some of those questions and clarify them, once I'm done with that, I'll share that with the team.
Cool, thanks. Any last call? Last call for any last items?
Yeah, one other thing related to output that we're running into is our output renders have the option of getting this injector object that allows them to add additional line types. What we're finding, and this is a really weird quirk in how Altair and Vega Lite work, is that we have a custom JavaScript-based render for that MIME type that renders to Canvas or SVG. And that works great. We can grab the PNG from the canvas and then save it as the PNG MIME type. What we find is that for really large notebooks, though, you end up carrying around the massive amount of data required to create the canvas visualization and the PNG. And so there's some in it. Basically, you quickly run into situations where you just can't have many Altair visualizations in a single notebook. And so what would help us is for that injector to also be able to delete MIME types, and most importantly, delete the MIME type that is using the injector currently. Basically, it's a way of a MIME type saying
yourself.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's
interesting
horrible.
to replace yourself, huh?
Exactly.
So that means that you can execute code and then play with it quite a bit, possibly change the output quite a bit, and then freeze that output with no provenance of what you've done in the changing. I mean, that's what you're enabling here.
No, I mean the PNG is written immediately. It's not written after you. Yeah.
Okay.
Now one thing that we're going to run into likely is Vega and Vega Lite is soon going to get interactive graphics, and then yes, we would want the ability to trigger an event to write the current state to a PNG. And so now we acknowledge that
we need the ability to override an existing key that is not your own. So it's sounding more and more like a MIME renderer might need to access this entire bundle and just do what it wants. Like we were too restrictive to begin with.
Are there unwanted side effects from that?
Well, the one being displayed is the one that had priority. So you could say that it now owns the bundle and can do what it wants with it.
So we've talked about having actually all of them rendered in different tabs or something, or lazily rendered in different tabs, and I mean you could still delete tabs and add tabs as the one displayed is changing things, but we've talked about putting each of the MIME types on equal footing as well, or having a configurable order for the user to say, or for a front end to.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, if you had a drop down, that drop down would reflect what's currently in the bundle.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. Even if you had tabs across the top, I mean, tabs can be added or disappear. We found the same thing with widgets, though. I mean, when we're trying to essentially store widget state and with BQ plots and stuff like that, where there's a bunch of data being transferred over, and yeah.
It would be really nice if we could render the PNGs on the server side and just send them over, and then they're there to begin with, and we could optionally send the JavaScript MIME type or not.
That's what matplotlib does, right? I mean.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But we don't have Vega Lite is a JavaScript library, and so in general, a kernel doesn't have the ability to render the raw data structure to PNG.
Right. Unless Matplotlib implements. I think at one point there was conversations about Matplotlib understanding the Vega spec.
Yeah. So I'll open an issue about it, and we can sort of discuss options, but I at least wanted to flag it and discuss it a little bit.
We could make this a live object that we're giving to the renderer, and then at least other folks could be notified when something changes.
And just give it the whole MIME bundle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we still need to make the changes in the renderer in the rendering infrastructure to let a renderer reject rendering. Like the widget manager needs this. If it gets a widget state and it says, "Oh wait, actually I don't know anything about this widget. I want to say actually I'll pass on this one," and then let you choose some other renderer, which would be a text renderer saying that widgets here, but we don't know what it is, whatever.
Go to the next one in the priority list.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's still infrastructure changes we need in the rendering system to make it a lot more flexible.
Okay. Yeah, let's we can open issues on those things and track it.
Okay.
I think the one you just mentioned, Jason, is already marked for 1.0, isn't it?
I thought we put it in
issue.
there. I thought I'd opened an issue. Yeah.
I've been trying to move API-related things to beta if we can, since we're
if that's that might be something to move to beta then.
Okay.
Because it affects the render MIME API. Yeah, good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, because people will be writing a lot of render MIME extensions, I think, for beta.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Any last other things? All right. Goodbye, Internet.